All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The time's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call tonight's school committee meeting of November 30th, 2017 to order. First order of business on the agenda are the minutes from the November 9th meeting. Motion on the floor and second. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on this? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Motion passes 4-0. All right, chairperson's report. A lot of things going on in town right now, which is fantastic. The fall sports season is just wrapping up. Congratulations to all of our student athletes on a really successful fall season, especially cross country team with several runners placed very high. Last night was the Ballard Talent Show. I believe there were 24 acts, which made for a relatively full evening. So congratulations to all of our performers. And next Friday night kicks off the telethon for WAVM. I was reached out to as chair to represent the school committee at the event. And traditionally, we ask if anyone from the school committee would like to contribute to a motion that we make on behalf of the school committee. So tonight, I will just let you know, and I will follow up on the subsequently, and I can, deliver the check on behalf of the school committee as well as the telethon. So kudos to them for continuing a very long and illustrious time. And I think that brings an end to my chairperson's report. So it's Dr. Maynard for superintendent.
Okay, so there have been a lot of concerns around the nursing resignation that we had at Fowler, so I just wanted to address that right up front. And there's been a lot of lessons learned in communication. In fact, Chairman Hem has given me some good advice so that we can be more proactive in the future, so we're working on that.
Is that the listserv?
The idea of creating a listserv, especially for students who have health care plans, so that parents would know in advance.
Fantastic.
The way we've had to deal with these difficulties in the past is the way we've dealt with them now, but it would be better to communicate it more proactively. So I wanted to thank you for that idea. And just let the public know, we're working on improved communication in the future. Because employee performance and hiring is confidential and it's an operational issue, I really can't share detailed information. But in general, with the public, what I can share is one of the concerns was that we didn't have a substitute one day this week. We now have substitutes lined up all the way into next week.
That's great.
The other concern was that we were going to have a lot of subs and not have a permanent position. And I know that our nurse leader and our director of student services have been interviewing, and they're confident that possibly as soon as next week we could have a permanent person in there. So fantastic. I want to report the positives. That's exciting. I also wanted to update the school committee that we had mentioned the position of technology director, and we're at the final rounds of interviewing with that and doing reference checks, but we have some really good candidates, so I'm excited about that. Just wanted to let you know.
Excellent.
That'll be really helpful. Fortunately, we have good staff who are working in the buildings at the grassroots level, so that things are still being fixed, but we do need a director, so I'm excited about that. And lastly, I'd like to acknowledge some of our superb central office administrative team. 2 of them are sitting here tonight. Oh no, actually only one. Michelle. Jennifer's actually at a meeting, just to let you know. She's working with the committee that's recommending the foreign language programs for the future. So she's working with another committee right now. She may be able to make it later. The Global Competency Task Force. So anyway, I wanted to recognize Michelle, Jennifer, and Carol, our Director of Student Services. I had mentioned to the school committee about how the state had developed new and better comparison data for communities, and it was called Radar, and that there was a grant opportunity that if you use that data, they could possibly give you a grant. Well, the 3 of them did an incredible job, and they wrote a wonderful grant, and Maynard was one of the very few districts that was awarded $50,000 for the next 2 years.
Wow.
So I know that Jennifer has put out a press release, and we'll see it in the Beacon Villager if you want to learn more about the details of the data they used and how that money is going to be used. But it's really exciting. You have some great staff who are finding ways to fund things through alternative methods like grants. So I wanted to end on a high note.
So it's 50,000 for each year, not 50,000 divided 25,
25, 25. So, but we'll take it,
We'll take it.
right? So that is the end of my report.
Fantastic. That brings us to our next agenda item, which is the student representative report. Hi, Olivia. Hi, Sophia.
Boy, this is really. Yes, definitely. Well, okay. Hello, everyone. Yes, definitely. For starters, we just want to. That is so loud. Wow. We just wanted to introduce ourselves to those who may not know us, because this is our first appearance of the school year. I'm Sophia Lapis. I'm a senior at Maynard High.
And I'm Olivia, and I'm also a senior. And we just want to let you guys know we also have 2 sophomores who were added to this position, Brianna Maury and Aaron Egan. They couldn't be here tonight, but we're hoping that we'll be able to get them going so that they can do it next year, and then we can have 2 more sophomores, and it'll just continue on like that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the first thing I wanted to update about the high school was our new advisory program that we have. It's a really cool way for students to not only work with other students, but also work with different teachers that they've never worked with before. You have things from knitting and crocheting to outdoor, like environment studies, totally just a million different things you can choose from. And I believe you get 4 different options, and you do those things 3 times. We just finished our first advisory, and we got to pick our second. And with choosing our second, you get to explain if you liked it, what you could do better, what we want. It's as much as the teachers provide the activities, they really want to know what the students would like, because that was our biggest concern the first time we brought it, because it was more so just teachers kind of made up. So now we have things about applying to college, like cooking, home studies. There's a bunch of things we may not have every week in the classroom. So I really like the new update with it, and a lot of students have been talking about how they really like it as well. So
Is this the second year that you're doing it like this?
yeah, yep. And there's like a lot more options this year too. And I know the teachers were talking about how the day the students had off, but the teachers were at school, they all got to kind of switch positions and learn. So they got to learn about like Google Classroom and like how to use a bunch of other different things, so then they can either teach us or use that in the classroom. So it's kind of been applied everywhere, and all the students are really enjoying it. And I think the teachers kind of like breaking away from what they study all the time to just teaching us their own lifestyle skills. It's really cool. So yeah.
We just had our National Honor Society induction. Actually, we didn't just have it. It was like almost a month ago. But and so last year I was elected National Honor Society president, and I basically, myself and the other officers, felt that last year's membership expectations versus what was actually done was a little bit disproportionate, I would say. So it's been a really big goal of myself and the advisors and the officers, and we're really trying to kind of revamp the program, and we're trying to work really hard to set a new precedent so that it really goes back to being a community service based group. You know, like this is the application process is hard, you know, and we want to make sure that what we do keeps in line with that application process. So yeah, I've really been enjoying that position, and our membership this year is huge. We have 40 members total, which is crazy. So many talented and smart people.
What grades can be in
You can apply when you're a junior to be inducted. It's crazy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Once we get back from Christmas break, and right before the last break we had, we were having auditions for our spring musical. And this year, if you haven't heard, it's The Little Mermaid, and Olivia right here is Ariel. And it's going to be a really good show, and we're really excited because when we get back, we start right away, full blast. And Miss Blanchard already talked about how she wants to be flying people and doing all these crazy things. We have a lot of backstage crew and tech members who are eager and ready to start, people who haven't even done it before. There's a lot of student involvement in it, and even one of the juniors, Lucas Pepin, is co-directing with Miss Blanchard to get that kind of feeling of doing that for when he goes to college. So there's a lot of different opportunities and things happening with it that haven't really happened before. And we're all really excited to be a part of it. And if you're not, just come and watch the show because it's going to be a really, really good one, I hope.
Yeah, I know it's been a while. I don't know if you guys have any questions, but if you do, yeah.
Of course. Sophia, sorry. Of course.
No, it was more the of course.
That's what I said, of course. Sophia, when did the advisory sessions go on? Is it after school or is it?
It's during school, so like the first one we had was during A block, and then probably a month later they'll do it, but it'll be during B block. So it takes up, so it'll just go down the academic day, but they try to avoid G block because a lot of students have work study and things like that. But yeah, that's I think another reason why students like it, because everybody is getting kind of a break from what they usually do, and it's not just like a hangout. It's like there's people from all different grades. So I did a CPR certification class last advisory, and now I'm certified at CPR, and there was kids from not only 12th grade but 10th and 11th grade. So I also did last year yoga with Miss Lerner. That was a very interesting time, but it was really fun, and there was a bunch of people who I've never even worked with before. So yeah, it's during the school day, and all the students really like it. So.
Excellent. And Olivia, I just wanted to, if you guys had been here 2 weeks ago, I was raving about you and the National Honor Society and talking about how you helped me with the food pantry. So
Thank you very much.
So your ears must have been burning. Anyway. Thank you.
I think I would just like to tell you that we keep hearing, it's been coming up again and again, that Maynard High School kids, like just in general, just how people that just keep encountering them for various reasons just keep saying what a great group of kids you are, and it just is great for all of us to hear, particularly those who have kids that are still at the elementary level.
Yeah.
That are hoping like you're just, you're blazing that pathway for a good personhood in the
Thank
world.
you. Yeah, no, I think the best thing too was, I know you mentioned cross country, we were going to bring that up, but that was a great way to bring it in.
Sophia, if you would give us some more details, like who were some of the notable runners? Like
Yeah, so Grace Sharon, who I believe is in 8th grade, and Claudia Severance, who is also in 8th
Her
grade.
dad's a runner.
Yeah.
I knew him in college.
No, they're incredible, and that was another program that, I mean, it just started last year, so it was kind of on a rocky road. It wasn't even considered a full sport. We were as a club in the yearbook, which came to surprise to me. But then we came in this year, and we had buses ready for every meet, and we also did a bunch of like team bonding things that we had never done before, because you don't see the people every day. But I know. Who was the one that made the announcements every day here at Fowler? Liz, yeah. Liz used to make announcements whenever we had a meet, because we'd always wear like our jerseys, or we'd do like a team psych to wear like crazy neon colors or like crazy sock day or something, and she would always like make sure to. She was like our Fowler like cadet or something like that was the name we called it, and she was like a junior captain who made sure everybody at Fowler was informed, and then we had our captains at the high school who made sure the high school students were also informed, and we ended up going to districts. Those two brought us to districts, and they did really well, especially not only for their age, but just like for the circumstances. We've only been running for 2 seasons now, and they worked really hard. I mean, they only had practices with 2 people and the coach, and they were able to just keep up and keep working at it until it was a pretty long season too. So they did a really nice job, and it was just a really nice way to finish off. We had a whole we got to do a senior meet. It was just like we were like a normal sports, like it was really nice, and I'm so grateful for the experience and that we were able to actually start something new as a sport, and hopefully now it'll carry on into many more years of good running. So
Yeah, I'm telling you. A few years from now, that cross-country team
it's gonna be really good, like very, very good.
We were, like, just being honest here, seniors were probably the slowest.
Yeah, but we blamed it. Yeah, they run all the time. Like their parents were very like that's their thing, which is amazing. We partially did it to just stay in shape, get the running up, but it ended up being such a great like team bonding experience. And I'm not even just like saying that, like working with the 7th and 8th graders. Some may look at it as like little kids, but it was really, really fun. And we had the senior night, and everybody was crying, and it was just kind of like we were like actually a team, and it felt good that we had like started something here at the Maynard High School and Fowler, and now it'll carry on. So, yeah.
Terrific. Thank you.
Actually, I just want to expand on what School Committee Member Houlihan said, because actually, School Committee Member Brantley and I were in my office when Bob Shriver
Oh
from
my
sudden
gosh,
cardiac
I was
arrest
thinking
came in.
that. Mhm.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we had reported about, at other school committee meetings, about how the whole school had the training in CPR and
Yeah, that was
AED,
really
which is
cool.
something we've been wanting to do as a health and wellness initiative for a long time. And now every year, the ninth graders that come in will get the training so that everybody is trained. But you could talk to it. He said it was the best school, best behaved school he had trained.
Respectful, the kids
He
helped
was-
put things away.
Wow.
He was blown away by how great the kids were, so. it's
Yeah,
nice to
when we
guys.
got the email, I didn't realize that every student in the entire Maynard High School would be getting the certification. And then we went down, period by period. It was a big process for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, they were so happy with the fact that Maynard High is now all certified. And it was really cool because as much as we have those advisory classes, those are people who have worked one-on-one, have been in the situation. They had these real life, I guess dummies, and it was really, really cool. And they made it interesting for high school students to learn about it and put a really serious note on it. So that was really also.
But you got a lot of
You
compliments.
did get a lot of
That's
compliments.
awesome.
Yeah.
From
Wow.
all three of them, they just went one right after the other, and he said they haven't seen this kind of, just the respectfulness and that, so it was a real positive experience, so, which we know, but it's nice to share.
Any other questions for our student reps?
It's great.
Well,
Nice
Lydia,
to have you
it's
back.
nice to finally see you.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully we'll have all four of us.
That
so
sounds
we-
fantastic. Can't wait to meet them. Thanks
Thank
for coming
you.
out and sharing your night with us.
Good night.
All right. Citizens' comments. Yeah, go ahead.
Can everyone hear me okay? Should I come to my-
Can you come towards the mic? And just for the people in the room, maybe just introduce yourself really quickly.
Hi, my name is Ann Alexopoulos, and I'm actually want to address the nurse situation that was kind of brought up earlier. I have a daughter in kindergarten who has severe anaphylaxis. She's been in anaphylaxis 5 times and administered EpiPen, and has severe asthma, and she's on medication as needed. She usually needs her medications, her rescue medications, 3 to 5 times a week. And I don't know when she's going to need them. It's, when she's wheezing. And her kindergarten teacher is the one who's been on top of it. When she noticed that she's wheezing, she sends her down to the nurse. She has 0504, so she has to be going down to the nurse with an adult. And I was very upset when I saw at 10 o'clock at night on Monday that, on Facebook, that there wasn't a nurse and I wasn't notified. Because if she needed the rescue medication, and I understand all teachers are EpiPen certified, but what about if she was given Benadryl, and the Benadryl can prevent her from going into anaphylaxis? Sometimes she needs it right away, or she needs her inhalers right away, or oxygen level drops. So now if a nurse was at Fowler and had to take 20 minutes to come to administer her medication, it would be from mild to severe. She's been admitted before for respiratory concerns. And the fact that I didn't think I would have to write on a 504 that I would need a nurse in the building, but next time I will. And I'll make sure that that would be on the 504, and also that if there's a substitute nurse, I want to be notified, or if there's no nurse in the building, I want to be notified. Because I'm entrusting, I guess I was under the falsehood that that wouldn't happen when I was at the 504, which was actually, the first meeting we had was actually with the old nurse in May, because we wanted everything to kind of be in place when she went in. But I do want to say that Ms. Krasinski, her kindergarten teacher, has been absolutely amazing. She made sure, anytime she notices her wheezing, she sends her right to the nurse. Kathy, the nurse, has also been absolutely amazing. I talk to her usually once a day because I have to administer medication at home, and she can only get it at certain times. And she emails me when she gives medication, so I know when to give it next. But I just wanted to know what the plan would be in place if the next person leaves. Because they're on a contract, they can leave. So will there be a list of subs, and will I be notified?
So I think there's a lot of miscommunication about agency nurses versus direct hire nurses.
Okay.
Any of them can leave.
Okay,
And it's happened before. The notification piece is something that Chairman recommended, that what we do is we get a listserv, especially for families who have children with medical needs. So they have the health plans like you talked about, so that we can keep you updated and let you know what's happening in advance as a parent. So that's what we're going to do in the future. Our school nurse coordinator is putting that together for me now, so that we'll have that communication tool in advance in the future. But the problems that occurred this week have occurred in the past. When we had direct hire nurses, sometimes people get sick. Even nurses get sick. In fact, they're around a lot of germs. And so when they're sick, we have had the problem where we've had to do coverage in 2 buildings, and it's not ideal. The nice thing about the agency is actually the fact that we were able to get substitute nurses until we hire the next person more quickly than we have in the past, because normally when Colleen posts in the paper, nurse substitutes needed. Most nurses have a job, so you can't get a nurse substitute. It's hard to get teacher substitutes, but a lot of times you get kids who just graduated, so they didn't get hired, and so you can get teacher substitutes, but that's not even easy. Nurse substitutes have always been harder. So actually using the agency helped us to get the substitutes that we've gotten until we get the next permanent person in place. And the other thing is, I really appreciate you saying that Kathy, the nurse that we hired through the agency, is amazing. So the point is, I have shared with some of the parents who have emailed me, and I was hoping once we get that listserv that I would share it with all of you, that I feel fortunate to work in a district where the school committee says, we want you to hire the best. We don't care how you do it, whether you do it through a posting, a traditional hiring, or whether you get an agency, we want the best candidates. In this particular instance, we hired somebody who was so good that they got another job supervising a bunch of other nurses in a much bigger city making a lot more money. So that is what it is. That's going to happen whether we direct hire or agency hire.
okay.
But what we want to do is find the right people who are the right fit. And so the fact that Kathy sounds like she's a right fit for you makes me feel really good, and now we've got to get the right fit for Fowler. And my plan is to get the right fit and the best candidate. And as I reported, they've already been interviewing, and I think we're going to get that person. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Can I ask you a quick question about, so now, let's say there needs to be a sub again. What will happen if she needs her medication and there's not a nurse in the building?
So the nurse, when there's a situation, first of all, the good news is we've been able to get more subs than we ever have. So I don't think that's going to be a problem anymore.
Okay.
It was a problem the one day.
Okay,
I don't think that's going to be a problem. However, if it were to ever happen again, like it has happened in the past, you would have to have coverage, but they're on call. So they know as soon as something happens in one building or the other, they leave whatever they're doing and they go to the other building. But nobody
Okay.
misses medications, nobody misses the time, they have it all planned out. The problem is just getting really good people and getting them stable.
well, I think it's not like my daughter, it's
It's
a rescue
different.
medication.
Right.
So it's
But they would be
usually at
called.
gym or at recess or something. And now, unfortunately, flu season, it's all the next 6 weeks.
Our principals, our secretaries, our nurses, and key staff all have walkie-talkies,
Okay,
so that as soon as something happens, they can call on the walkie-talkies and alert each other and get who they need, where they need them.
okay.
So there are plans in place, it's just, a lot of people don't realize that there are plans in place.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
and I think that wasn't communicated.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Yeah, it will be in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, moving on. Welcome to our friends of Maynard Soccer. Evening, gentlemen.
Hi, Justin. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. We're
Thanks for
back.
reaching
We're
out.
back again.
Thanks. Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jim Hines. With Steve Jones, Tom Hesbach, Kyle Norris, and Barry Roach. Anybody else who didn't know? There's a
Guys
few of
traveling
us
numbers.
who are representatives of Friends of Maynard Soccer. So, this actually started 2 years ago, the end of 15. Steve, as part of CPC, kind of got us together to try to fix Fowler Field. I think you guys, everyone is fairly aware how nice Fowler Field is. And we kind of wanted to take that on as an initiative. We came for your support, got your support, went to CPC and got a study approved. That study was approved in the spring of 16 or Q2 of 16. In the meantime, worked with Aaron, with some of the people from VHB who he contracted. We finally we went back to CPC because the study was in process, so we were trying to kind of get a kitty sort of earmarked. They approved another $50,000. The study got done in the spring of this past spring. So this past spring, the study got done. The study told us that it would cost somewhere around $2 million to completely renovate Fowler, which is a preposterous amount. And I don't think it's, maybe not, maybe, I don't know.
Your initial presumption was correct.
Yeah, so we kind of pushed back, so a couple things have happened. One is, as Friends of Maynard Soccer, we started a 501c3, started a GoFundMe page, and we've raised some money. We've raised almost $10,000, but without some realistic number, it's hard to go to businesses and have an artist rendering. So VHB, we kind of pushed back on VHB a little bit, who's the consultant, I don't know what they call it, but the company that does the study. And we said, listen, what is a realistic number so that, because what we don't want to do is come back and say in 5 years, Fowler's a mess again, right? We want to be able to fix it and actually fix it. And we also want to have, a facility that we can be proud of, and that the school soccer program is over 100, 150 kids, somewhere in that ballpark, probably, from 7th grade through high school. And if you're ever down there in October where there are 6 teams trying to practice or play, and maybe 8 teams because there are teams from out of town playing there, it's a nightmare, and it's not in very good condition. So it's still what it is. So the next our next step is so we talked to VHB. We think that the number is somewhere between 200,000 and 400,000. We think that number can get us regraded fields with X amount of loam or loom. I'm not sure what the word is. I should have learned this by now. It's been 2 years. I say loom, you say loam. Ideally get it irrigated, and have a facility where we can have 2 fields that, can be used, plus the surrounding Area B practice facility that can be used by the varsity teams or the JV teams, so that they're kind of all in one complex. So that's what we're working on. The VHB has been great. Aaron's been great. They are working on talking to some turf companies to actually get some ballparks, not anything, just kind of come and say, hey, what do you think, so to speak, before because we can't do anything, we can't put it out to bid until we have the money. We're not going to have, right now we're at 50 plus 10, so we're at $60,000, so we're still quite a ways away. So we've put in a new warrant, CPC, for $150,000. And that's in process now. So we are here for a number of reasons. A, we are here to ask for your continued support because it is your field, and we are merely volunteers as you are trying to bring this kind of to happening. So I know in the past you guys have been great. Dawn's been great. We had, I think, a letter was what we needed to kind of go to CPC with and say, so if we could do that again, that would be superb. The second thing, and I'm not sure if Aaron has reached out to you, Dr. Girardi, or not, but we have been meeting kind of monthly, a number of us with Aaron and with Catherine at VHB, and we felt like it made sense to have somebody, a school representative, with us because, again, it's your field, and if we're going to do something to it, you should probably want to know about it and be okay with what we do or have the same direction that we are. So that was the other thing, and then the third thing really is you may need to help us answer the question to CPC when they ask us, who else has skin in the game besides CPC, right? And we haven't come to the school for money yet. We're trying to raise funds. We think we can raise a little bit more, but I don't know if we're going to be able to raise $100,000. So we may need your help on that, whether it's through grants or whether it's through funds that may be available that we don't know about. So that's just something for you guys to think about. And did I get everything? Does anybody else have anything? So questions?
Go ahead, Dawn.
Just in terms, so I've done the CPC thing a few times now
Yeah.
for various projects. Did they have a lot of applications, do we know yet, or is it too early to know, Steve?
The applications were right in the start of that process now. All the final applications are there. There's only one other, I believe one other recreation application this cycle
And will you get,
for 10,000.
and I'd say that, I think, just the only, you know this probably by going through it so many times already, is just make sure that what we ask CPC for, that 150,000 is very well explained for them, just because we've gone through this a number of times. So I don't know if VHB is going to help with that, or,
So VHB has put some stuff together for us, just to kind of, again, it's hard, it's a chicken and egg, right? You know,
Right.
so to try to say exactly what it's going to be, and we ran into this, like I said, when we got the first 50. So, yes, Catherine has basically given us an initial letter saying this is what we think it is. I don't know if she has met with any of the turf companies to get a little bit more detail
Sure.
on it. So hopefully by February, which is when it kind of goes through its cycle that,
well,
you
I
know.
think for the first, for the, I think, don't they do draft, the draft?
We're in
proposal?
draft right now,
Yeah.
and the final draft is due this week, or was it already due? No, it was already due.
Yeah, and you said regrading.
Sorry with the timelines.
Regrading, loam loom, and irrigation, so I mean.
That's idea, yeah.
Hopefully for a draft, I think that sounds pretty solid to me, but.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've all done this a couple of times now for various things, so.
True.
Yeah, and then follow up on your comment about having some interest in having a representative from the school side
Yeah.
join you.
I can email Aaron and just double check.
Okay.
We'll be able to find somebody to help.
Yeah, I don't know if it's one of you or somebody from the school, I'm
I
not
was
sure.
going to offer, just because I already
Oh.
have some relationships
There
with
you go.
most of you anyway, just through my children's participation in the soccer program.
Okay.
And I know that some of the other members of the board are pretty tapped out right now with budget subcommittee work and policy and so forth. I'm only on one subcommittee this year, so I don't mind picking up the
Okay.
liaison piece.
We've been meeting on an ad hoc basis, so it's not like we have it, so it's basically, we kind of put a number, try to put a date together, and we'll just include you in that
Yeah,
thread.
no
and-
worries, and you've already got my email address
Yep,
and everything anyway.
absolutely.
So
Okay.
It seems to make the most sense, that, at least to me, that way, unless somebody else wants to.
Nope, that'd be great, that'd be great, thank you.
And then a lot of those other conversations, as we get further on in the process, I'm not super optimistic that we can scrape together a lot of money.
Yeah.
Just based on the work that our budget subcommittee is already doing for this fiscal year.
Mhm.
We've thrown that really ugly word out around town. They've got a lot of people that are one of our early in the year meetings, that override word.
Yep.
So there's a lot of moving pieces, but I think the fact that we're starting this dialogue, bodes well. So-
Right, and the other thing too to keep in mind is that even if we do get the CPC to commit to another 150, that number, we don't get that number until June or July, so we're now into fiscal, so I mean, we had maybe higher, loftier goals of having Fowler started earlier than that, but, it's obviously more realistic that we're hoping that we can get it started maybe, a year from today we're talking about doing it, so hopefully that gives us some time that maybe we can, raise some funds and find some funds somewhere, so.
And I like the idea of finding grants, so if you find anything or we find anything,
Yeah.
we can work together on it. We're more than happy to help with the writing and the collaboration to help you with that.
That would be great, because we
That-
probably
that's
could
what we do all the
use-
time,
we're
so.
not
Yeah,
good writers.
but that's what we do all the time, so
Yeah.
even if our in-kind services helping you get the grant, we're more than happy to do that.
And because it's athletic focused, should we pull Kevin into the conversation also as our AD? Maybe he's aware of particular.
I know he's been working with Aaron on all the fields, but I don't know about this.
They kind of, we've been focused on Fowler,
On one
obviously,
project.
but obviously, there's stuff coming, right? Alumni, and, there's other things, so I know that Aaron and Kevin dialogue
Yeah.
about it, I'm not sure. It may make sense for him to be pulled in or
Yeah.
not, I don't know.
I know he's a supporter.
So would it be helpful if we voted on the letter of support tonight, so you have it for whenever you need
Yeah.
it? You don't want to get into a situation where we're not meeting for 2 weeks.
Well, that's true, because I think we did that, we said that, and then all of a sudden, I think we had to come back, circle back with you and get a letter. So yeah, if you were willing to do that, that would be super.
So I'm happy if you're okay with making a motion.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So I make a motion to approve Dr. Girardi to write a letter of support for the Friends of Maynard Soccer to propose to the CPC for a grant for $150,000 for Fowler Field renovations.
I'll second that motion. Motion's been made and seconded. Do you have any discussion? All right, all in favor? Motion passes 4-0.
And just keep letting us know how we can help.
Okay, appreciate it, appreciate all the support.
Thanks for coming out tonight, Joe.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you all.
Thanks for everything.
Take care, have a good night.
All right. Agenda item number 7, policy number 18, bullying prevention and intervention policy, first reading. And I know that Throughout the process, Dr. Girardi, you and the policy crew, and Colleen have really had to do a lot of work on what was an initial policy from many years ago.
Yep.
So do you want to walk us through it?
I'd be happy to. And what we did for the audience is prepared a couple of documents that, one document that we used at the forum in October. We had a bullying forum that was really well attended. So we have that document, which is an article from the Huffington Post. And then the actual bullying policy and the changes that were made by the policy subcommittee. So those documents, well, I'm going to walk through the actual policy and describe what the changes are, but as you can see, there's red text and notes on the side that this was done in track changes, so people could see what changes were actually made.
Sure.
So you'll see on the first page, the first sentence, and in fact, it's nice having Mary Mersch on the team, by the way, because she's an English teacher. So I'm not going to go over the grammatical errors that she changed, just the substantive changes so that we can, understand why things were changed. So on the first page, in the first sentence, on the second paragraph, you'll see the inclusion of the words "and school staff through private vendors." And I believe Dawn picked that up, the change in the law, because a lot of school systems and ourselves use a lot of vendors and staffing from vendors. So if you think about our bus drivers and our food service workers, that's all through vendors. So this policy applies to everybody who serves kids in the Maynard Public Schools. And so we wanted to make sure that that was well articulated, and we did that in that particular paragraph. On the second page, in the first sentence of the second paragraph, you'll see the inclusion of the words, on the second page, in the first sentence of the second paragraph, you'll see the word, we eliminated the word perpetrator and just left aggressor, because this is something that the state had made a point of emphasis on, that perpetrator wasn't appropriate. They really wanted to change to aggressor. So wherever we had perpetrator, we changed it to aggressor. But again, we get directions from the state and the changes in the state law, and so that's why some of these changes were made. Then on the third page, this is really where the meat and potatoes of changes occurred. You'll see that in the second, third, and fourth paragraph, they were totally rewritten and added into there. And in these paragraphs, it defines conflict, rude, and mean behaviors as something different from bullying. This is really important, and it's related to this article and the discussions that we had at the October 3rd forum, that when the state first came out with their definition of bullying, it wasn't clear to everybody. It made it a little harder. And by identifying the differences between conflict, rude, and mean behavior, that really will help us as we go through the process. So you can see each paragraph, one addresses conflict, one addresses rude behavior, one addresses mean behavior. And so that's an addition to the policy.
Bob, can I just stop you? So, like, when I see parts that have been crossed out, were those crossed out, they were part of the state one, but we decided not to include them, or were they further conversation? Because the whole 3 paragraphs are new, you said, but then there's cross-outs.
Those are multiple drafts.
Oh, okay.
So,
that was just
some of us
different
wrote something,
conversation that-
and somebody edited it a little bit, and then we had the final
It was
edit. Mary
internal.
did the final edit to make sure it was, grammatically correct. But
Perfect.
we all contributed to this document, which is really nice. It was really a
This is
great
the
process.
final consensus.
And
okay.
this is the final consensus.
So we're just seeing the words.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I know, I was just, where they were all brand new brand new
Yeah.
paragraphs, that's the only reason I asked.
Okay. And then on the fourth page, in the first sentence of the second paragraph, the one substantive change that was made was to change the word eliminate to remedy. And I think at the forum, a lot of people got the understanding that solving bullying is not quick or easy. It's a really hard problem. And I think it was also identified that oftentimes the aggressors are often victims of bullying themselves. And they need, sometimes punishment works, but sometimes they need more social services and other of those emotional programs that we're developing now to help them move beyond that kind of behavior. So it's not quick, it's not easy, and we felt the word eliminate made it sound like we could just go, no more bullying. So the reality is that it does define how we're going to remedy some of the recommendations for provisions for counseling or therapeutic services or punishment when appropriate. But that was a key piece of that paragraph that we felt was important to explain a little better than we had in the past. So I think it just makes it a little more clear how difficult it is, but that it's important. So because policies on the school committee, due to your bylaws, have to be read twice, this is really just a first reading. The school committee can obviously make recommendations to us, and the policy subcommittee will take those recommendations, try to incorporate them, and then we always have our attorney review it to make sure that what we're suggesting is legal. And then that way, when it comes to you at the next school meeting as a second reading, then it will be hopefully a very solid document that you can approve. That will be the process. The other thing that we will do, the policy is what the school committee approves. We always bring the bullying plan and the bullying reporting form to the school committee as well. So at the next meeting, you'll have those, but that doesn't require 2 readings. This one did, which is why we wanted to get you a first look at it and get the public a first look at it. And so we'll review all 3 documents at the next meeting and look for approval of the documents. So, does anybody have any things you'd like to discuss about it?
Yeah, then I'll come to you next one. Top of page 4, it's in the reporting section.
Yep.
And I'm presuming that the change is due to the change in our administrative structure, but the change that I'm seeing is, the report may also be made anonymously to the principal. And previously it was to the building principal, but should I presume that because we reorganized the admin structure, it would be to the principal of discipline?
It could be, well, it could be to any principal, actually. That's
To
why it
any
was,
principal.
yeah, that's why it's rather than building principal, it could be to any principal.
Okay.
And that's a good point, because there is no, in the past, assistant principals would be taking the information, but
May it be made anonymously to the, okay, to a principal?
could be.
Could be, okay.
Maybe we
So it's
should change
something that we can
Yeah, I can change that.
consider offline. Mary?
So just how this goes into place. So I'm a parent, and my child comes home and says that they've been bullied. What are the steps based on this?
So based on this document, if you would like, you can call the principal's office and say, I'd like to make a report. And the principal will say, we have a reporting form online. You can put it in writing that way. If you'd like, you can tell me over the phone, and I will write it on your behalf, or you can come in and talk to us, and we can write it on your behalf. So any way you want us to start this, we need the information to investigate. The reporting form is the beginning of an investigation process, but we need the information as to what happened. And so that's how it usually starts.
Okay, so they go to the principal of the school that their child is at, and then that would start the ball rolling. Okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily the principal of the school the child's at, that's what.
Right,
Justin
right,
was-
exactly,
It could be
yeah.
in your
It could be.
So I guess that, I have 2 things, if you, unless you have
That's all right.
something.
No, I'm good.
One of mine piggybacks off of yours, which is, so if I was a parent and I was looking at this, I might be left like, what do I do next? This is a lot of mumbo jumbo. And so I don't know if the bullying plan or the reporting form will provide more clear instruction for a parent.
They do.
Okay.
The bullying plan is actually a more wordy document than this. This, usually the policy is pretty succinct. The
Yeah.
plan is like everything that has to be done and all the laws, and it quotes everything. But the bullying reporting form is very clear.
Okay, cool.
And it also shows, part of our bullying reporting form, also the last page or so, I think, is the response. So there's a form there, so that after the principal goes through that process, then they write a form and respond back, because part of the policy is that we have to get back to parents in a timely manner and get that information back to them in writing. So there's a part of the form will show that, but the form is user-friendly in that there are checks, boxes to check, and places to write things in it.
Great.
Can I
And
just ask a question? How many parents actually fill in this form?
How many parents what?
How many parents in the school, I mean, how many reports of bullying do you know about from this form?
From the form?
Yep.
So the forms have to be sent to the central office, and Colleen collects them for me. But every year, we get a significant what would you say, how many a year?
Putting her on the spot.
Yeah, you can put,
I wouldn't say a lot.
So are you saying
20 to 30,
Are you saying
depends on the year.
So, can I pause you for a moment, please? Because I was going to take some questions. This was the part for us to do our work. And I do appreciate your question, and I do want to come back to you. That's also a very difficult ask. So perhaps this is something that we could just take, and if you want to, we can get your information. Colleen can get you that specific number.
It was just because I was just listening to how you were filling out the form, and as the other lady just did, said, how does it impact on a parent? That was just my question.
Sure.
Yeah. Usually the parent wants to fill out the form or just tell you and have you fill it out. And we do that. And we do get a significant number of reports, and we do get some reports that come back as bullying, and we get some that don't. So those are general.
Yeah, no, that's.
Because it's good for you to know, because what if we got a bunch of reports and there was never a finding of bullying? It's good for you to know that we do have, we keep track, not only does the building principal keep track of it, we keep track of it at the central office. It actually goes to Carol and you. But our Director of Student Services keeps track of all the buildings and all the principals to make sure she knows that she sees all the bullying forms, so that we can supervise the buildings.
Yeah, coming back to you, Mary.
One other one. So when a parent fills out the form, do we give them a timetable that we'll get back to them within a certain amount of time? Because of course, when your child's being bullied, it's like
Yeah.
today is the end of the world.
So we've actually learned through the process, well, the law says timely. It doesn't say a specific, 2 weeks, 1 week. But one of the things we learned is that if there is a finding of bullying, you have to create a safety plan. Even before there's a finding of bullying, what our principals are now starting to do is actually work on a temporary plan. Not a safety plan, because the principal doesn't know yet whether it's bullying, but usually something needs to be done.
Good. It's good to know. Thank you.
And you said you had two things.
I
Can we get both of
did.
yours?
Good job, Chairman Hem.
Thank you.
So,
I try to be a good listener.
the other one, you are. The other one was, reading this through, I noticed that they talk about making sure there's protection for anyone that reports bullying and for the victim, but I feel like the accused or the whatever, the proposed perpetrator, I've heard of situations where they actually end up start getting harassed. So I feel like we should make sure it's in there that there's some protection for them as well, as far as making sure that not just.
Yeah, that's the way we operate, but what you're saying is you don't see it in writing, so you want to make sure that everybody's protected.
Yeah, if we're writing it all down, I want to making sure all parties are protected until such time as, and I mean, even then, they should be protected. No matter what the outcome may be, they deserve to be protected as well.
Well, because as we learned from the forum, oftentimes, there's a reason why they're being a bully, or why their behavior is rude or mean or conflict. And while we know that detentions and some of the traditional punishments work for a majority of kids, and I know I'm a rule follower, so you put a rule down, I'll follow it. But for some kids, there's something deeper. And that's where you really have to help figure out what the problem is and fix it.
Dawn, did you have anything?
No, just because I was on the subcommittee, so I feel like just sort of listening, which is great.
Based on what we learned at Mask this year, Bob, I'm also particularly pleased to see the inclusion of gender identity
Yes.
in the protected groups.
I missed
Just
that one.
because at Lexington High School where I teach, I was part of the original committee that worked on this policy for our district back in 2010 when the mandate came out from the Commonwealth. And obviously since that time, we've developed quite a bit more awareness about some of the groups that are highly susceptible to this behavior. And as our awareness of other populations has increased, I'm glad to see that the most recent version of this policy does include that protected group also. So that's fantastic. So if there's no other questions or comments, I am going to break a little bit from our typical decorum and open it up to the room, because I know there's a number of people out here that probably have.
I have a sort of comment and sort of,
Go ahead.
in terms of next steps. So next steps being, we go with this and a second reading and all that. But one thing that I felt from learning so much about bullying and the state laws and sort of the forum and the feedback we've been getting is I think we can go a little bit further, but more in terms of our codes of conduct for each building. So what I think, so being on the policy subcommittee, I would like Mary and I to sort of continue the work. So, we'll button this up at some point. We'll say, here's our finished product for this year. But I'd like, with the school committee's permission, for us to continue and look at codes of conduct. Because I just strongly believe that not everything qualifies as bullying. And as a lot of us know, bullying has a very strict definition under the law, and there's a lot of things that we can't fix based on the law and the protections in place. But I firmly believe as a parent that we're all trying to turn out really good citizens. So are our teachers and administrators. We're sort of all united that we want such great kids. And we had two of them here tonight. You have the Olivia and Sophia talk, and if we could just produce all great kids. And for the most part, we do. And I'm a big believer in positive reinforcement and all that good stuff. But I also think that it's really a privilege to represent our school. So I think that we just need to look at what we agree on for codes of conduct for the buildings with the principal's input and input, from all the stakeholders. If you're not living up to the codes of conduct we think are appropriate, then you don't get to play sports for Maynard, and you don't get to be in the band, and you don't get to be in the play. And I don't want to be a punishment society, but I think to some degree we really do try to reach the kids, and there's always a few we can't. And I'll be damned if they're the ones representing us. So that's just something I'd like to continue to look in. So there's bullying, and there's the laws around that, and there's what we can do, and making sure we're responsive. But I also think that I just want to make sure our codes of conduct reflect who we are really all trying to be.
And I think that work could actually help inform the handbooks, because each handbook has behavior, but it's not really a code of conduct. And I think code of conduct elevates it to a certain level.
Right.
So I really appreciate you thinking in that light, because I think a lot of progressive communities do look at it that way. So I think you're onto something there. So I'm looking forward to working with the policy subcommittee on that, so we can recommend the changes to the handbook instead of having behavior policies, having code of conduct policies.
And as you start to follow the path through our admin regs, our policies and so forth, if you and Mary would just periodically give me an update, just so I can sort of see where you are in the process.
Absolutely.
I'd really appreciate that, because I find this particularly relevant to my work.
Oh, for sure.
As a professional, because I work with protected class, so this is near and dear to my heart also, so thank you very much.
Sure.
Fantastic. Yeah, in my professional world, I'm an autism specialist. I work with a very targeted audience sometimes, so bullying strikes a lot of chords with me. So I do want to open up, I do want to ask, just in the interest of brevity and respect for others people's times, that I'll entertain points of clarification, suggestions, and really try to keep the conversation as focused as possible tonight, knowing that in a few weeks we will come back and revisit this again for a second time before we vote on making it a permanent policy. So, any other, I know I interrupted you. Did
I finish the answer? Did I finish it for you?
Unfortunately, it's one of my requirements for my unpaid job here, but did we touch on everything? Would you like to connect with Colleen after the fact, or?
I mean, I just want, because the other ladies were talking about it, I just blurted out a question.
That's okay.
I apologize.
But I think I covered it, that there is a formal process where these are held, and roughly how many we get a year, but it depends on if it's a tough year or not a tough year.
Yeah, it's just, so, I mean, there was an incident this week, and obviously I know you don't want to talk about
Specifics.
Yeah, we have to be careful who and what and how.
I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
Anyway.
talk around it, please.
Yes. So whatever happened was a kindergartner, my kids are in kindergarten. There was a little boy who went to our thing with another little boy, and a bigger boy went in and basically manhandled them. And it's just so, that kind of behavior, and I don't know the full story. I was trying to find it on my phone, but there's no reception. So I'm just wondering, is there maybe a way? I mean, obviously I don't expect teachers to be walking kids to bathrooms and stuff, but is there something that's happening? Because it's just that little bit of bullying, that little boy. And I don't know this little boy. I don't know anything about it. I'm just thinking that could last for a lifetime. That sort of bullying part. And I have two daughters that are one's in kindergarten, one's in preschool. They often come home, the kindergartner comes home and she tells me that some of her friends are pushing her. Some of the friends are saying, it's just,
So what I can say about the incident is our teachers are really diligent, and they work with the principals, and when we have incidents like that, the principals investigate them right away. That particular incident was investigated as well. So I know that the principal has talked to me about when she meets with the faculty to see if there's any other contingency plans, so they're working together to try and figure out other possible solutions to prevent it from happening in the future. But the teachers and the principals work together to try and solve these problems. And I know, like, in regards to that incident, that they're talking about what can we put in place to prevent these sort of things from happening.
I mean, obviously my accent, I'm very new to the American school system, so I apologize if you do this and if you don't, maybe. I mean, do we have in each, like, older classroom, is there like a designated, like, school classroom leader that kind of would, you know, be like I know they do a buddy system in the kindergartners with the older kids, so like my daughter has a little kid, another kid up in the next year, both her and they experience time together, which is fantastic. So maybe we could utilize that where older kids can talk to younger kids, or have that sort of social, like, hear something, say something thing, or maybe bring out that policy within the school that we have this more open discussion about bullying or anything really that makes it a more sort of open and free speech policy rather than everything. I mean, I know you're smiling. You're saying it's probably you.
Well, we have some teachers here, so obviously they can bring back any ideas too when they're working with the principal. But we do have our community meetings where we do talk about bullying with all the students. We also have our morning responsive classroom meetings where the teachers really do focus on behavior and they focus on bullying.
But it's more that the kids actually feel like they're part of it. That's what I'm trying to get across, is that, it's all very well that the adults in the classroom are dealing with. That's fantastic, but really the bullying comes from kid-on-kid action. So, if we can sort of maybe involve the kids more in that policy, trying to help make them understand that we're helping them, that there's a free speech for them to come and talk to. If it's an older kid, or if it's, at university, we used to have on my door, we used to have a designated person. If you were like, whatever happened to you, you would go and speak to them. I mean, why can't we have something like that within the school where kids feel like they can go and speak to another child that's obviously not an adult, where there's that pressure of, I'm telling on somebody, and that child would then be the representative and they can speak to the teacher and say, this is what I can see. Like the two students here today, they would be fantastic sort of role models or discussion points that they could be, they could go into the school and say, like, I'm here to talk to you if you want to talk about something.
You're almost talking about what we have at my school is almost like a peer leader program. So that's a very interesting concept.
So we can run it by the principal to have that conversation with the teachers as they're trying to plan and prevent these sort of problems in the future.
I do know that my daughter literally just told me today that they're asking her and another girl to help their third graders, and they're asking them to model for each of the grades in an assembly bullying and do a dramatization of it. But I'm wondering if it would make sense to, and I think this needs to go to the building to make the decision, but I appreciate all the suggestions and getting the juices flowing, but somehow being able to show another child seeing something happening and being able to stand up.
Absolutely.
Well, anti-bystanders, yeah.
Upstanders. I knew there was a
Yeah.
word. I wasn't
Yeah.
getting that right. There's this new thing it's a cool way to say it that I've done. Cool. But yeah. But peer leaders, something like I think all
I
those
think
things are
between
nice
the
ways to
three
help.
schools, I mean, you've got a wealth of knowledge and kid-friendly.
Yeah, it'd be a great senior project.
So on that thought, when this happened at Green Meadow, and a lot of people do know that it happened, and it's following up on her conversation, did the other teachers in the school, did it get to the teachers so that the other teachers at the school could start a morning by saying, right up, this happened, and this is, how would you feel, or was it just sort of pushed under the covers kind of thing?
No, it was thoroughly investigated, and all the classrooms were included in the investigation because nobody knew who was actually involved.
Right.
And The extent of the involvement was a little different than what was portrayed out there, so it took a while for the principal to find out what actually happened, then to try and find out who was participants in what happened. So I do know that the principal spent a good portion of the day reaching out to all the staff to try and figure that out.
But did it then go down to the students and say, this happened, and how would you feel if this happened? You know, to take a learning experience, you know, a teachable moment, and just, you know, does that kind of stuff happen when?
Well, I don't know if the principal coordinated that, but the perfect time would be during the morning meeting.
Right,
Like the next
exactly.
morning, they could have a conversation
Right,
about
and
it.
just so, you know, so that it's not just a hidden thing, it's like everybody knows, and, you know, if, it just, I think it would be a really good thing to do that.
Springboard for the conversation. I'm going to come here and then I'll come to the left side of the room. Go ahead.
So I have a question that's more in relation to this situation, because that's why I'm here with other kindergarten, so obviously you the whole school system too. One thing, so it's not on the bullying policy, so I don't know if it's appropriate to ask now, but it seems like my daughter in this particular incident happened in the restroom. It sounds like the kids can probably go to the restroom on their own if they need to.
Yes.
My daughter's come home on several occasions and said, oh, this kid's standing on the toilet, this kid's not listening. And it sounds like there's a lot of activity happening around the restrooms.
Okay.
And I just didn't know if there's more supervision that could happen around that, because that's probably around the time that kids are really up by themselves, right? Because most of the time they're in the cafeteria with a lot of kids, or they're on the, at recess with a lot of kids and teachers, and that's probably a time that they're really by themselves.
Yep. So that's what the principal and the teachers are working on. If there's other ideas where there could be less freedom.
Wait for me.
I'm coming this way, but there's been about 3 or 4 different hands, so I was waiting to see if, yeah, go ahead.
With the was it the bully prevention roundtable that happened a month or so ago?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and what is the progression of that process, and where are you guys at with it? Is there another one that's happening? I thought it was going to be one of a series of a few.
So, I mean, the best person to answer that question, unfortunately, is leading another committee tonight.
Okay.
It was my understanding that there might be follow-up as well.
Right.
Based on the conversation that occurred at the table that I was sitting at that
Okay.
night. But what we'll try to do is ask Jen.
Right.
And maybe we'll get her to put something out on Facebook, just
Okay.
as a clarifying, because I don't feel like the conversation should just end there.
I agree. And I think one of the things that I wasn't aware of when I went to that meeting was that we really were just looking at what was on the book at the moment. And I'm wondering, I'm guessing this is sort of what came out of that meeting a little bit. I don't know. But
So, can I answer that one
Yes.
before you launch into the next one?
Yes.
The policy that you're holding
Yeah.
was mandated by the Commonwealth all
Right.
the way back in 2010. All of the school districts in the Commonwealth were given advanced warning, like you need to put together a bullying prevention and intervention policy. So in my particular district's case, they looked for representatives across the departments, across the buildings, to start to look at what a policy might look like. But obviously it's a big, very complicated, intensely legal concept.
Yeah.
So along with that, the Commonwealth also put out guidance and sample policy that I would say upwards of 90% of the districts in the Commonwealth just sort of accepted boilerplate with small tweaks to make it more specific to their particular circumstance. This is now an opportunity for us to build off of that. So the changes that you're seeing are the changes that go back to the original 2010 policy, with reflection more on what the current practices actually look like, changes in legal definitions, obviously, other laws that have subsequently gone on the books and so forth. So that's sort of where we started and where we find ourselves now.
And also, even though we make changes, that's why we have to have the attorney look at it, because it
Right.
was legally mandated by the legislature and then the guidance by the Department of Ed. And there's a lot of layers of regulation and laws. So we might say something's good, but then the lawyer will say, oh no, that violates the law, you can't do that. So we always have to have it checked by the lawyer to make sure we're complying with these laws and
And
regulations.
case law is constantly changing.
And then, and then if things go to court, then that might change it through case law, which is why some of these things had to change,
Yeah.
you know.
I certainly consider it an ongoing conversation. So
Yeah.
my guess is that Jen would say, after a certain amount of time, and once that we have our policy in place, and then if we want to look at, we can we wanted, we could make it, update this policy monthly. We won't need to.
Yeah.
But I think that Jen would likely say that let's have the next step in the conversation. So I don't feel like bullying is something that we can ever really just button up and be done with. I think it'll be an ongoing community conversation, and we'll always put out word to have parents, hopefully join us. Some things are attendant and some things aren't, but I think that one has enough traction that we continue the conversation.
So this satisfies the particular legal
Okay.
obligation, but it doesn't speak to a lot of the other things that we discussed at the forum that night.
Right.
Which is the PBIS and the teacher
Right.
leadership and the student role, the social emotional learning. And that's sort of the top-down sides, and everybody hopefully meets in the middle process.
Yeah, and I was really interested in that.
Yeah.
And I have to say, your suggestion of the code of conduct, I think is phenomenal. I think it sort of deals with some of what people were looking for out of that forum, and especially the parents that perhaps get a bullying report back that has been denied, I guess, as bullying, and they sort of are just like left there like, well, I have this massive problem, and what are we going to do about it? And they aren't validated in the fact that there's a solution. And perhaps something can come of that piece of it. And then sort of to your point regarding the peer mentorship and stuff like that, there was one thing I came across in preparation for that roundtable that I felt was really a significant model, perhaps, and I have no idea what it is. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. But what I really liked about it was a program of whoever comes in and teaches it to the kids and the staff and all that. But it gave children, young children, elementary age children, a set of criteria that they know are, I guess you could call them rules that keep them safe. Whether it's safe from predators, sexual, bullying, whatever it is, whether it's in school or outside of school. And it is a common language that's used amongst all of them, and they know when to say, you are doing something wrong, you need to stop, I'm not feeling safe, or whatever it is. And I feel like some of that is maybe missing at that young level, and I think that it would be a really interesting conversation to have going forward of implementing something like that. And the tools to stay safe as kids, whether you're with peers or you're with, out in the world, give kids the opportunity in instances like whatever happened to say, this is not okay, and to figure out what to do about it immediately, how to advocate for yourself, advocate for the peer that you're with, and to have a plan of action that happens immediately. And everyone in the school has that common language and understanding of what needs to happen. Just a thought. And
We did do some.
I was going to say, we did do that. Did Dawn Holmes set that up? Those two ladies, it was in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, we
They
did it
yeah.
actually for the Boys and Girls Club and us in
Right.
combination. We had a parent evening a night, but we also did during the day. But it might have been 2 years ago,
It was
so it might
right.
be time to bring that
I
back.
think I agree.
I love that idea.
Yeah, we did do it, and it was nice that we did it with the Boys and Girls Club because we have such close connections with them. But it's something that we should probably bring back.
And the parents were involved also,
It
at
was-
night.
It was with Peter Pan.
The Peter Pan organization,
Yep.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Other dialogue, points of clarification? Yeah, Meg, you've been waiting patiently, thank you.
I was at the bullying forum, and so I don't want to get into too much of the weeds if what I'm bringing up is getting into too much of like a plan piece. But I know that in the bullying policy, it talks a lot about like if there's identification of bullying, these are interventions that will happen for like the perpetrator of bullying activity target. But there isn't actually a lot about the target or the victim, about like what happens with that particular student. And I didn't know if that was something that the school committee wanted some sort of policy regarding, because when I was a part of those discussions at the forum, we really talked about what happens to a student if there was a finding of bullying, but we know what happened perhaps to the bully, right? What types of discipline they might have received, but there wasn't really anything that necessarily stated protections for the victim or the target.
So I love where you're going with that. My question would be, and I know you just wrote down that comment, Dr. Girardi, is I would want a little bit of advice perhaps from council on whether or not that would be appropriate for the policy, or whether it would be better they're targeted through like an administrative regulation or some sort of established procedure that would be signed off on by a leadership team or MLT or whoever might be involved in that process. But I like where you're going with that, because that is clearly something that's not spelled out in the document that we're all looking at tonight.
Yeah, I don't think it's spelled out in this document, but I do think it's spelled out in the reporting form that a safety plan, and it's spelled out in the other two documents, that a safety plan would be provided for the target or victim.
And I'm familiar with the safety plans, like, as a teacher, like, I sort of know what happens, but I think I'm just hearing parents who say, and then what happens?
Yeah.
And if the policy is sort of the first thing you go to, before you get to the paperwork.
So,
I wonder
like,
if there's
one
some
of-
sort of line that can go
Yeah.
in there about it.
I think in the bullying plan, it talks about some things like a safety plan can include, and I don't say see in the policy, but I think it is in the plan, that a safety plan could include creating a safe person for the victim to report to. So somebody in the room or in the school that they would go to that they consider safe. Those are some of the things remedies that we provide to the victim so that they would feel more comfortable after an incident, knowing who they would talk to, how they would report it, and helping the student understand who to entrust under these circumstances. So that's like one of the things, but I'm pretty certain in the plan it talks about that and maybe a few other things.
Right, and as a follow-up, the page that talks about rude behavior, mean behavior, and conflict, we had talked at the forum about that shouldn't be like an end game type of thing, like, oh, it's conflict and we'll never talk about it again. And once again, not that that necessarily belongs in this particular policy, but I think it's also important for parents to know that just because there's not a finding of bullying doesn't mean like, all right, now we put that paper away and that's done. And a way to communicate that information. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily, I don't know that it necessarily belongs in this particular policy, but I think that to get that information out to parents is important.
Yeah, what you're stating is that you know as
I know it,
teacher
and I know
that
how
the disciplinary, even if it isn't bullying, if it's rude or mean behavior or if it's conflict, it goes into a disciplinary file. It's not one and done. If it happens several times, then it could actually become bullying. So we need to report it, we need to log it, but because those files are confidential and only the teachers who need to know get to see them, you've experienced that in the past, but parents don't experience that. That's the hard part that you're pointing out.
And it sounds like there's a piece that we could add on, whereas if there's a page that says this is the path towards remedy, for lack of a better term, at page 4 in the bullying investigation packet, maybe there needs to be an addendum to that says, you know, this is how even if there's a finding of no bullying, like here is the plan going forward to, you know, as Bethlehem was suggesting, get some help for perpetrator, how to protect the target, et cetera, et cetera. So it's something to consider, and I know that can go to the policy subcommittee.
Well, that's what we did first week, and then we get a lot of great feedback at that point, and then we can circle back again.
Absolutely.
So that's great. That's great feedback.
What you just mentioned, I think, from what I heard from parents with personal experiences in that forum would be huge. And I think that was something they were really looking for and they weren't getting, and it was upsetting for them.
When the conversation started, it triggered a memory because I'm pretty sure we had some
Yeah.
conversation on the table also.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to quickly say one more thing in that my daughter is a second grader and there's some intermingling of girl issues that parents have had concerns about, you know, it progressing as they get older, and if it's not like sort of capped and dealt with and dialogues happening amongst them now, that it could progress into something bigger. And I have to say that the guidance staff at Green Meadow is phenomenal, and we are so happy, and the things that are being done just with what our parental concerns are huge, and they're making a big difference, and I'm seeing a difference with my daughter, and just the overall social relationships on a daily basis that are generally problems aren't as consistent a problem, and big kudos to them, and I'm really happy that we have them and that it's working.
I don't want to make light of what you just brought, but my daughter's class, second grade, was also a really difficult year also.
Yes, I think both our
I had
daughters
similar
are in
experience. The
heavily female
team-
classes.
Yeah, the team did a phenomenal job.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, It's made a big difference.
Because that was a very conscious decision of the school committee to get that staffing to Green Meadow.
Yeah.
So
As
that's
you guys
great.
are talking for budgetary things, just to let you know, I thought I'd put it out there. Plant the seed.
Yeah, just start going to BOS when it's schools.
Yes, yes.
And hi.
Hi. This just has to do with the policy itself. So on the first page, it talks about it's not limited to an educator, administrator, school nurse, et cetera. And on the,
You're in paragraph,
that was on the first page there, the second paragraph.
second paragraph.
Right, it just goes through all the people.
Yeah.
So on the fourth page, it says to anonymously report to the principal. And I know this is kind of a, you know, maybe like a stupid thing to bring up, but what if it is the principal?
That's a very reasonable, I don't think that's stupid. I
Okay,
mean,
so,
because-
yeah, so just in case, I was just thinking more high school too, level versus elementary, but. So is there, you know, I mean, I would know what to do, I would go to the superintendent, but.
Or guidance or something.
Or,
somebody
yeah,
else trusted.
but maybe have that worded somehow, not just the principal. I mean, I know you're trying to follow a chain of command, which makes sense, but if it is the principal who is the aggressor, then.
Like one subclause, could very
Right.
clearly lay that out. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. Okay.
Right,
Oh,
Carol.
Title IX officer, Carol.
And not that we're saying we have that, but
No.
just in
If we're doing
case.
the policy, let's just.
Yeah, it would be nice to not have to go back to this for a year or two. We have a lot of policies on the books.
Right.
In case you ever want to put yourselves to sleep, go to a policy. There's a lot of them. I did policy.
So that's a good point. So the policy subcommittee will look at that and try to figure that out.
Because Bill called him retired.
Yeah.
He was the master of policy. Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I just did one thing that, in talking with the board of selectmen about different things, I know that Krista Silva was mentioning too. We were saying that it would be good to be able to look at this like in its totality, be able to maybe use some of the things, the tools for even for adults, like, and not presenting this think we are, but I think in the online realm, I just seen again and again things where people just, it's so hard to tell what people mean, and people, and it's just so having some sort of, when we're talking about cyberbullying, and I feel like it's hard for us to wrap our heads around how do you deal with that in the online realm. And so he actually was suggesting it would be really helpful for adults as well, for the whole community to be having.
Because I'm 100% fine.
Just for all of us to have a really good sense of some of those tools. So, anyways, just not.
Awesome.
Maybe we can look at possible workshops through the Middlesex Partnership Review. Because a lot of times they have parent and student around cyberbullying. And we've done some in the past, but we can bring them in again for more of that common language and people understand. So Middlesex Partnership Review might be a good resource for what you're asking.
All right, let's move on then. Second reading, policy 333, public gifts to the schools. What do you have for us, Ross?
Just, we brought it to the table at the last meeting, and we'd like to request an approval of the second reading of this policy at this meeting.
And I don't see any changes since the last time.
No, it's pretty standard.
Pretty standard. Go ahead.
Well, if you want to amend it, I would say it's up to you.
Well, it's just when I read it again, the second paragraph, gifts that would involve changes in the school plans or sites, or are not interfering with the school system's core values, because we talk about special interest groups at the top. Special interest groups could be guns, it could be drugs, it could be, marijuana, it could be anything. So just to have that caveat, to say that
So-
that gives the permission for it to be approved.
Or not in keeping with school.
Not in keeping with the school system's core values. I would say exactly that was written. Again, it just, gives the ability to.
Yep, that makes sense.
Otherwise, that was it.
So what we can do then, Mary, is you could make a motion to approve the policy as written with the specific change that that you just suggested.
You just did that, so that's good. That works.
All right, so let's.
And I've written it down. I've written it down.
Let's formalize that. We can do some written language here, Rob. Okay, so I will make a motion to approve school committee policy number 333, public gifts to the schools, as currently constituted, including the change or not in keeping with the school system's core values, will be subject to school committee approval. Further discussion or questions?
Get that also?
I'll give this to her.
I haven't read it, so we should read my writing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. That was a really excellent point. Thank you. All right. Number 9, members' comments and questions.
So, Chuck had, from the high school, had sent a letter out, very important letter out to the parents about vaping, which I hadn't even heard of. E-cigarettes, which I commend him for. There's been a lot of discussion with people that I know that have kids up in high school and that it's become prevalent, this is a good word. So my question is anything, and I'm always thinking about the younger kids, because by the time it gets up to the high school, it's like too late. Is anything being done at the middle school? No, I'm not saying it's about the 9th grade, but even 8th grade, now that they're down there, I just feel like if we could get the word out to.
I would say, considering we had 4th graders smoking at Green Meadow Pickup one day this year.
Oh, we did, I didn't know that.
So I completely agree, and I think that any good idea between one building should really be shared, and I would hope that Chuck and Sharon share ideas, because I think that was exactly what I was thinking too. Like, we can't start early enough on some of this stuff.
Okay.
It goes back to the police department, that presentation. It's like, we got to start this stuff early because the kids are starting early.
And I'd like to credit CPAC, because they're the ones who actually alerted Chuck and I to this.
Excellent.
So we can alert Mary Beth and Sharon about just sharing with parents that information.
And then I guess my follow-up is, what else are we doing about it? Because a single letter isn't, I'm understanding that the kids can hide this stuff easily, and they think that it's not going to be detrimental to their health because it doesn't have nicotine, which it does. Can we maybe put together a plan to do something more, maybe have a forum with the parents, or just have an informational night, or have an assembly with the students, just to bring somebody in and tell them,
But weren't they having, actually, he was building into some of their curriculum, right?
Right, yeah. I guess I thought it seemed a little informal, but I guess maybe, and I'm happy to follow up with Chuck or something if you want to. I'd rather it be more than just a one and done type of thing. So,
We can look into it.
And since I don't know much about it, having just a 3rd grader, I don't know if this ties into some of the health things we do in the schools.
Right.
So maybe it could just be part of the health curriculum.
yeah, that's a
It was
really,
recently
that's a
added
really
to
good
curriculum
thought.
in my district.
Was it?
Okay.
Yeah,
So maybe that's the place to do it.
Maybe that's the place to do it.
That sounded,
Okay.
like, from what I read, it sounded like that's not what Chuck was looking at. but
Right. So if we can do it, and I know we've got that up at the high school, so if we could do that at the middle school again, that would be really, really nice.
Yep.
That was it, thank you.
Middle school and Green Meadow, Dawn?
Sorry?
Green Meadow.
Send the message out to parents at middle school and Green Meadow? Might as well,
I
right?
mean, I say why not? Because what if the Green Meadow parent also has a kid at Fowler and just only happens to see one of the messages or something?
Right.
So, I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like most of our messages should just be district.
I'm a big believer in starting as early as possible with education,
Yeah.
so about all of this.
Other questions or comments?
Well, I have just 2 things. One is that Mary and I met with the curriculum subcommittee and principals and representatives from the different buildings, and Jen and Bob, and it would be nice to just give a little update next time around. We can decide what would be the best things to kind of make sure everyone's aware of.
Yep, and we have a bunch of updates on, we just finished a global competency task force recommendation, so we'll have a bunch of things to talk about.
Perfect, that's
Check.
great.
So,
Yeah.
Tommy, if you
Working.
wouldn't mind, could you take Bethlyn's recommendation, maybe just add it as a potential agenda item for our next meeting? Curriculum committee update?
And then, thank you, everybody. And then the 2 other things I want to mention was that my kid, so I have two kids, one's in first and one's in third grade, and they have been talking about the zones, which is part of the emotional, so we were literally at the dinner table, and there's something that happened, that they were talking about, it happened today, and Chloe's like, so Calvin, were you in like the green zone, or were you in the red zone about that? Like, how did you really feel? Like, it was like, so just like part of the conversation. So I did want to mention that, because it seems like it's becoming.
The zones
they're
regulation is part of our social and
in
emotional.
there, yeah, it's part of the social
The
emotional.
teachers are
learning.
doing a good job, and it's obviously working if the parents are hearing it at home. Isn't that wonderful?
So I just
will
thought I'd
pass that
mention
on.
it, and Chloe, like, they wrote the zones on some paper, I don't know what they were teaching each other, they played teach
Isn't that
all the time.
wonderful?
Anyways, and then the other thing was that I have a friend in Acton, Boxborough, and her son is in 5th grade, and he came home, and it just got me excited about a lot of things we're focusing on in relation to project-based learning. They were doing a Shark Tank thing in his class. So we came in and we were having dinner, and he was like, hi. He's like, do you want to see what I'm doing? He like had the papers lined up. He's like, this is, so we had to figure out, we had to rent space, and this is how much it's going to cost. I'm doing this, I have a partner, and then we have to do, and this is what the machine is. It's a Lego vacuum. Don't tell anyone I told you that. I think it's supposed to be a secret. So no one.
It's not a secret anymore.
It's like, we had to get like, it just got me, he was just so excited, and it just really got me into just see, just, this is what we're trying to do for kids. So, and I know that that's what we're focusing on too, so it just got me excited too for what we're doing here.
Excellent.
Anyways, I just wanted to mention that.
Don, you got anything?
Not tonight.
Friendly reminder to the other board members that we have Sip and Stroll downtown this weekend. We have the parade and so forth, so it's a pretty hopping weekend for Little Maynard. So I'll probably see most of you down there.
Bless you.
That's on you.
And at that point, I think concludes our business for the evening, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Because you're sick, then I can't.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made, do I have a
That's what it
second?
seemed like.
Thank you, Mary. All in favor? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, everyone.